Member Andrew Williams.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to take a call on behalf of New Zealand First for the Crown Minerals Permitting and Crown Land Bill. And as we advised the first reading, New Zealand First will be supporting this bill through to committee stage. We have some reservations about some aspects of the bill, but we do fully support the intention of it. This bill is all about the natural resources and the Crown-owned minerals of our nation, which is a very, very important part of our economy. New Zealand First recognises that economic development and economic growth is required for our country to succeed and prosper, and for the benefit of the people of New Zealand. Therefore, it is most important that we get this right, and it is most important that this Parliament passes legislation to ensure that we do get it right. In terms of Crown minerals, something in the order of $2 billion has been received by the Crown since 2008 from royalties on minerals, so it's a very significant amount of money coming to this nation. And the taxes that the national government gave, virtually the equivalent of what the national government gave back to the wealthy 10% of New Zealanders, $2 billion a few years ago. So we certainly need these royalties to offset the $2 billion that they so swiftly gave away when they came to office in 2009. In terms of the royalties, however, we, New Zealand First, do have some concerns that the royalties disappear into a big black hole in the Crown coffers and don't necessarily benefit the location from where the resources are taken. As a result, New Zealand First put out a policy a few weeks ago which is called the Regional Royalties Policy, whereby under New Zealand First we would return 25% of all royalties taken back to the region that the resources are taken from. This has had huge support from around the country, and many organisations have advised us that they think it's a very sensible move that we've put forward, in that it would help a great deal of economic development around the regions, and it would also help many of the regions who are financially strapped to provide their necessary infrastructure. For instance, you could imagine that many of the rural roads now that have been cut off from a significant amount of funding because of the roads of national importance taking priority, and particularly some of the motorways and various things that the Honourable Stephen Joyce would love to roll out everywhere. But as a result of that, many of the rural communities are suffering on their roading. Now, if in that situation 25% of the royalties were returned to some of those local authorities and to those regions to help support their infrastructure, it could offset some of the costs of, for instance, roading in some areas that's deteriorating as a result of heavy vehicles and trucks and those sorts of things for the extraction of the minerals, the resources, forestry, even getting into all sorts of other areas of taking resources from New Zealand. So we believe it's a very important policy. It would also benefit the likes of the Chatham Islands, and the Chatham Islands, where our select committee heard that the Chatham Islands Rock Phosphate Company wishes to take extract phosphate from the Chatham Islands rise, and about 1% of the area of the rise to be extracted, so a very small part of the rise, but something in the order of 25 million tonnes of phosphate over the next several decades to make New Zealand 100% self-sufficient in rock phosphate or superphosphate, which currently comes from Morocco and Algeria and various other dodgy places, where New Zealand could become self-sufficient in it and therefore reduce our importation requirements. That would be very significant for the Chathams if, for instance, 25% of the royalties taken from that rock phosphate were returned to the Chatham Islands to help pay for their infrastructure for a relatively small population there, but that would give them ongoing guaranteed income from the Chatham Rise, and therefore a very sensible policy which we certainly hope the government will take up and implement in due course. We're supportive of the fact that there is a two-tiered system for the permit management, so that the higher risk, higher value minerals, which perhaps have more significant effects, will have a higher level of permit management requirement, rather than those that are at a lower risk and lower value, which do not present the same effects. Swift and decisive action is also possible under this bill for non-compliance, and therefore it is a good thing that non-compliance will be acted on and that there is swift decision-making to address that. The bill will also have a process to sift out applicants that do not meet the standards, and it will basically vet applicants in a sensible manner in the early stages so that people do not waste time, do not waste Resource Management Act time, and do not waste a lot of Crown time or ministry time or time of the courts in terms of application. So they'll be sifted out early in the piece to certainly improve the process. It is interesting that the bill includes a requirement to report the engagement with iwi and hapu, called the iwi Engagement Report, and that's required each year. We were wondering whether the iwi Engagement Report was another name for the engagement between the National Party and the Maori Party, because they seem to have very much an iwi engagement between these two parties all the time. So we do wonder how that necessarily will be affected. And we will be watching that with interest. But we certainly feel that in terms of the minerals of this country and in terms of the extraction, this must benefit all New Zealanders, and it must be for the benefit of our nation so that our nation can go forward most certainly. The bill streamlines the system for industry and community consultation, and the aspects that in this bill are good, as it provides for and ensures community consultation in relation to Crown interest. It also complements the Exclusive Economic Zone and Continental Shelf Environmental Effects Act, which was put into place last year. So in terms of that, this is a good move, lining this bill up with that act that was put through in 2012. However, New Zealand First position is always that we support economic development, but it must be in terms of the environment in a sustainable manner. And the environment must always be given the benefit of the doubt if there is something at risk that is going to impact on that environment. We must ensure that the 100% pure New Zealand image is not tarnished in any way, and so it is important that aspects of this Act or this bill are closely scrutinised to ensure that that 100% New Zealand pure image is maintained. New Zealand First will be supporting this bill through to the Select Committee stage. We're doing that so that this bill gets a full and robust consideration, and so that the people of New Zealand have an opportunity. Oh, it's been select. Oh, sorry. This is the second. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. So that New Zealanders have an opportunity to have a full input into it. We believe it's important. Every New Zealander stands to benefit from this, and New Zealand First will be supporting it.
Mr. Speaker, I call the honourable member Young Jen.